Hi everyone, I'm Sal, co-creator of Salt and Pepper Productions,
And hi, I'm Pep, co-creator of Salt and Pepper Productions.
and we're back with another The Promised Neverland video. Today we're going to talk about Season 2, Episode 8 of the Promised Neverland anime. So, a lot of intense stuff happened this episode, and we also got flashback sequences, and yeah.
Yeah, it was it's rather there's a lot that happened in this episode. We got to see Norman's flashbacks to when he was in Lambda. We got introduced to a couple new characters who either promptly died or were promptly like no longer in the scenes. And we also got to see Norman fulfill his plans and try to destroy the demons and be absolutely devastated by the actual result of what he was doing.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the flashback stuff and then we'll get into what happens in the present. So in the flashback, Norman is introduced to a man named Peter Rattery, which is
Yeah,
interesting because in a previous episode we learned that William Minerva's real name is James Rattery, so we're instantly introduced to this new character who has the same last name, and our immediate thought is, oh, he's related to William Minerva somehow. What's the connection? And what's his involvement in the story?
yeah. I would assume that they're like brothers. And Rattery says, well, Minerva mentions that he's no longer likely no longer alive. Or at least not capable of doing anything anymore. Um, so I think Rattery is probably like his younger brother or a cousin or something who found out about James's involvement in trying to free kids, and then ratted him out to take his position.
Yeah, because in the previous episode, episode 7, Norman mentioned something about the gatekeeper, and in this episode, during the flashback sequence, Peter revealed that James was the previous gatekeeper, but now he's the gatekeeper, and that he's going to be in charge of what happens with the farms and the children in the farms, including the kids that are in Lambda. Which is interesting to learn that William Minerva James was actually really high up in the farm system. He was the gatekeeper initially. So I guess
Yeah,
learning that the gatekeeper was secretly trying to help kids escape must have been a really big deal, a huge scandal, I bet.
yeah, probably. Well, we have no idea how disseminated it would have been in Demon Society, but for those who were in the know, it was probably like, oh my god, this is ridiculous. And it's probably was a big scam on like the human end as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would wonder if maybe the position of gatekeeper is like a family line that like a singular family has control over it because they're two that we know about. Well, James and the new Rattery. Both of them seem
Peter.
to Peter. Yeah, Peter. James and Peter are both Rattery, so maybe the Rattery line is a long lineage of gatekeepers.
Hmm.
You know, it's a family business. It's what you do. And then James was like freaked out when he found out about the true like extent of the human farming, and it weighed heavy on him. And eventually, he started to try and do something about it. And then it backfired, and he ended up being removed from his position. Whether he was killed or whether he was just imprisoned or something is unknown, because he is likely someone from the human side rather than the demon side. So we don't know how like the rules around that work.
And in previous episodes, Norman mentioned that William Minerva had supporters. There was this one supporter. I think he said his name was Sami or something like that. And in this episode, we see in the background this guy wearing glasses, and we can tell by the way he reacts to the stuff Peter says that he doesn't really like where Peter is going with things. And towards the end of the flashback sequence, we see the man with the glasses give Norman a pen. So, and that's when we realize, oh, this must be the supporter that Norman was telling the other kids about, that he was in touch with while at Lambda.
Yeah, who we see later that he presumably dies, or was severely injured at least, and then presumably died in their escape. But he's the reason they have a pen of their own and another location. Also, the fact that James was so high, he kind of like makes other things make sense. Like how one person was able to make all the books and everything kind of have these small little hints and details for the kids.
Like having one of the higher ups involved in
rather than just
plans.
Rather than like some low to mid-level worker just sneaking it in, he had a lot more power to like organize this sort of thing, and it also like makes more sense about how he was able to like build the sanctuaries within the demon territory.
Yeah, we were wondering about how the shelters were built. Where did the budget for that come from? Where did the money for building the shelters come from? And learning that somebody extremely powerful in the farm system was actually behind the William Minerva scandal. That actually explains a lot.
Yeah, it does. It also might be why he was like caught, because that wouldn't have been like as quiet of a thing as adding extra information to the books and the pens and all that. This was likely this might have been like the thing that got him caught, was him building these sanctuaries, and presumably there's more than one. And then like someone seeing like figuring out that he like been directing money away from like other things towards this and getting caught with it. Yeah, that's probably. I feel like they're connected. That like when he built the sanctuaries, he was caught. Also, it seems presumably likely that this happened relatively recently, that he was caught, like maybe right before the start of the first season. Or like during the beginning of the first season before Norman is shipped off, because we get that scene of Peter going, the reign of James is over. Peter Rattery will take over the world, or will rule the farms, and will be amazing and all that. His speech, which implies that he's like recently gained power and is like ranting about how powerful he is. So unless that scene took place like decades earlier, and he still looks relatively young.
I mean, it didn't take place decades earlier. It took place after Norman was shipped out, because they were talking about Norman in that scene.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Yeah, it's implied to have happened rather recently that like William Minerva, James Rattery, was caught, and like whatever happened to him, which kind of explains why the shelters were still there, but also why they knew exactly where they were, is because they caught James recently and they have all his paperwork, so they know. Oh, it's right there. Where are these kids going? Right there. What do we do? Ship the team out.
It probably didn't help that. I mean, it probably helped that Ray was stupid enough to scrawl the coordinates in that tree trunk.
Yeah, that 100%. Yeah, yep, 100%. That. Look, we kind of knew that was gonna come back to bite him, didn't we?
Right.
Like what? Ray, they already have the pen. They know where they're going. Why did you give the information to public access now? Ray! You're so smart. Why are you being dumb? Stop being dumb, Ray. Also, apparently, Norman is like one of the smartest kids they've ever run across. They mentioned that at one point. Like, they're like, the first genius born in the farms. And you're just like, okay, one, maybe he's the smartest kid, but he's absolutely not the only genius. Have you met these kids? Have you seen what they're capable of? These kids are 12. Not even. Most of them aren't even 12 yet.
Like, Ray, like, because of that time jump, Ray, he's 13 at this point, so Emma and Norman are probably 12 at this point.
Yeah, well, they're 12 at this point, but I meant like earlier, like when he was saying this, Emma was still like 11. Like when he was talking about Norman and like all that, like because this is back in this would have happened back while the events of season 1 were going on. They were still pretty young. Ray was like not 12 yet. He was 11 at that point still.
Well, to be fair, we don't actually know how long Norman was at the shelter, not the shelter,
Yeah.
at Lambda for, so we don't actually know when that scene took place. Did it take place before or after the kids escaped from Gracefield?
I feel like the scene itself would have happened like that like them testing him. They would have started testing him rather quickly. It's implied that like one of the first things he did at Lambda was be tested, and that like after a couple of tests they were just like, oh my god, he's a genius, he's the smartest kid that we've ever run across. And then like that scene happens where he's like ranting. So I imagine this is like in that time jump we get while Emma's leg is healing before Ray tries to set himself on fire.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine it happens during like that time, so like December or January or early January. At least that's what I would think that time period was happening. And also, well, actually, no, we haven't. They don't get winters here for some reason, because like when we had like because they escaped in like February and it was like rather nice out, so we can't
Well,
actually.
They escaped in January.
January.
Ray's birthday.
Yeah, sorry,
They
I was thinking
escaped from
February for some reason.
They escaped from Gracefield in January.
Yeah, in January, which is like normally like, I'll just look outside. We're coming out of February now. It's cold out there, but they were like relatively comfortable in like their clothes, and they weren't like it wasn't like a lot of snow and all that. So you can't when what I'm trying to do is like when you see the scene of them escaping from Lambda, you can't really guess what time of year it was based on like the weather.
Right.
Because they don't seem to get weather here. They have like a southern winter where it's like it gets a little colder, but there's not like a lot of snow or anything. Right? Like I'm just trying to like say we can't like pinpoint the time of Norman's escape either.
Right.
Other than that, it happened at some point between him getting caught and not getting caught, him getting shipped, and then him showing up like about a year or so later at like at the
village?
castle, the village. Yeah, I don't know why I wanted to call it castle, because the temple, the evil-blooded temple.
So let's talk about Norman and his time at the laboratory at Lambda.
Lots of pills and lots of tests.
Right. Like, we never saw them experiment on him per se. We saw him taking a bunch of tests, which is what he said happened. He said, I took a bunch of tests during my time at Lambda, and whenever he received food, he also received a cup of pills. So...
Yeah. I mean, those pills look to be like the same pills that, what's her name was given when she had her headaches and migraines.
Right.
So I wonder if like maybe the tattoo that's tattooed on like their chest has anything to do with it, or something, because those pills seem to be what was keeping them healthy. So something definitely happened to him that wasn't testing, that was like done to all of them when they came in,
Mm-hmm.
that like is slowly killing them. So I wonder if like they have like an implant or something of like that's just slowly leaking poison into them,
Mm.
or dosing them with a drug that maybe makes them more agile or more intelligent, but nearly kills them,
Mm.
or does kill them eventually, and that the drugs are the only thing that like those other drugs are the only thing that keep them alive. Because like we know Vincent was definitely experimented on because we see the bandages he had,
Right.
and we know the scar in his head. And the other guy, people seem very much experimented on, and we see some of the experiments in like the thing. We see like kids like with IVs who just look decimated and like destroyed.
Yeah, and we see Barbara and I think Sassy chained up to the walls or the floors as well.
Yeah, which is really interesting because like you see that, but then we saw like Norman's room, and Norman's room was like really nice, and then you have like that contrasted with like the absolute abject horror that's like going on in other cells and to other kids
Right.
in Lambda,
Like
and the absolute
there's this one part where Norman's walking down a hallway with the other researchers and the walls to the side are glass windows and so you can see into the rooms. On one side of the hallway you see a bunch of humans being mauled by demons, and on the other side of the hallway you see a bunch of humans and they look, what's the word?
absolutely destroyed, horrible.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm my English is failing me. But like hopefully you've seen the episode by now as we're talking about it, so you know exactly what we're talking about. Um,
Right, so Norman
uh,
has to deal with the trauma
yeah,
of what happened to him and also what's happening all around him.
yeah. Um, and as well as like the fact that like he knows that like um that there's other farms now, and that like his family's not the only one that's being torn apart.
Right.
That like there's other families out there who like possibly at this moment are having parts of their family shipped out to be eaten by demons. And also, I'm assuming that like he's probably been mistreated, was mistreated by some of the demons and yelled at by some of the demons while he was there. So his hatred of demons, his absolute despising of them, is well warranted by his experience.
Right.
Though I think, and I mentioned this earlier, I think it's a very interesting how they contrast some of the humans in this episode with some of the demons later on in the episode, because we see Peter acting absolutely awful, that he doesn't really care much about the kids there, even though he's human just like them. He's just really excited about his promotion and his ability to like make a name for himself, and he doesn't care about like anyone or anything, just that he's able to like do whatever it is, accomplish whatever goal it is that he's like searching after. While later we see the demon families that are being torn apart, and their massive amount of care for their family, and how like devastated they are by like not being able, by like their families being torn apart in front of them, and people going feral in front of them. That's a nice contrast between how we were originally made to think about the demons as these kind of heartless monsters, and the humans, at least the humans that we've seen, as like the good guys. And here, we see a human being absolutely awful, and then we see the demons, suffering and being destroyed, and watching their families be destroyed.
Right. So let's talk about the escape. Let's talk about how Norman met the people who would become his lackeys and how the escape actually happened.
Yeah. It appears that they planned it. They somehow him and he noticed at some point that someone else was using the equipment that he was, and that was Vincent.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was able to.
So they began to
Yeah,
slip notes to each other.
Yeah, which is pretty cool, and it's also really weird that like they weren't noticed doing this. Like I would feel like that would be something that they would expect to happen, or like would have precautions against, and they would like check the equipment to make sure there's not like secret messages written anywhere. But they didn't notice that. They didn't notice that, and it worked quite well for Norman and for Vincent.
So Norman
yeah, Norman and Vincent, right?
Yeah, so Norman and Vincent actually knew each other longer than everybody else. Like, so they've been working together on the escape, and then Barbara, Zazzy, and Sislo, they basically just joined them after
they were
the
abreast. Yeah. Yeah, they were strung. They were like tied up in some cell somewhere, and Barbara said something interesting when she saw Norman. She's like, "Are you God?" Which is, I imagine that she was like suffering a lot. That whatever was happening to her and to the others who were in that cell, they were suffering quite a lot. And she probably views Norman as a sort of messiah-like figure for having come and saved her.
Mm-hmm. So I thought it was interesting how Norman and Vincent seem to know each other longer than the others, and how in the present day we would get scenes of them talking about the experiments together, and even in one of the previous episodes when Emma and Ray first showed up at the hideout that the Lambda kids are staying at, Sislo was saying, "Oh, Zazzy is off with the boss, they're doing," and then Vincent chimed in and went, "The boss will be back soon. Why don't you just wait inside?"
Yeah. It kind of shows like Vincent is definitely Norman's right-hand man, and the others are sort of followers of those two. That Norman and Vincent are sort of, the head honchos.
Right.
And that even then, Vincent kind of follows Norman's lead.
Like he's the second in command.
Yeah. Which I guess kind of works because Norman is the one who started communication with Vincent and probably got him to believe they could escape.
Right. And the way they escaped was interesting. So basically, they found a way to set a bomb off. And
yeah, I don't know where they got the bomb.
Like, Norman was saying that he would need different equipment, and I noticed one of the things that happened when I was rewatching the episode to try to get a better grasp of everything that happened and to make sure everything was fresh in my head. So basically Norman has this bracelet on his wrist, so whenever he wants to receive food, he can hold the bracelet over this scanner, and then this slot would open and he would receive food. At one point we see him drop a fork and then retrieve a different fork from that slot. So I'm guessing that he was just collecting different parts that could be used, and at one point I think the camera panned over a tray with needles on it.
Maybe. I actually interpreted that scene differently because he mentions, there's 4 cameras in the room when he did that, and I kind of assumed what he was doing is he was like dropping his fork in different spots in the room, and that whenever the cameras saw him drop the fork, they would give him a new fork because he lost his fork. And I assumed he was kind of like using the fork as like a way to test where like any blind spots in his room were.
That's an interesting thought.
And then he was like using the blind spots as a place to like build his like bomb. I don't know. We didn't get much detail about how he managed to do it. I don't think they would have gone into much detail about it. But like, it was somehow he managed. Excuse me. He managed to put together a bomb and then detonate it, and then also to like capture the 4 demon security guards we saw earlier.
To collect some of the data that they had.
Yeah. Um. I mean, I'm imagining that like a lot of the data that he has and Vincent has for their plan is probably data that the researchers at Lambda already had on like demon degeneration, and that they just used it to like build. Then they used that information to build the compound that would degenerate demons.
Potentially. So the flashback sequence with Norman was relatively short, but
Yeah, but it was very interesting and very intense. There was a lot of very dark, kind of brutal scenes going on in the background, and you could see like very quickly Norman's progression from young young kid willing to sacrifice himself to older kid with need for vengeance against demonkind
mm-hmm.
for what they've done to him and to his family and to his species.
Right. So I think we covered everything that we need to cover regarding the flashback sequence, so let's talk about the stuff that happened in the present day. Like the search for Sonju and Mujika, and then the attack on the village.
Yeah. So Sunju and Majika are infamously hard to find.
I mean,
They like
makes sense. I mean, nobody knew that Mujika was alive.
yeah, but I'm assuming she doesn't go around like, I am the demon-blooded god. I will give you a drink of my blood, and you will not degenerate. I don't think she goes around, preaching, her ability to prevent degeneration anymore. It's probably much more intimate of meeting people and passing it along to like individuals.
Right, like what I was saying, that it kind of makes sense that it took so long for Emma and the others to find them, because they've been hiding out for a while to avoid being caught and captured and killed.
Yeah. Um. But they eventually find them, kind of by accident, kind of by almost getting killed.
Yeah, because they ran into some of the wild demons.
Yeah. That promptly tried to eat them and was like maybe about a hair away from eating Emma, when Sanju was just like, nah, head cut.
Yeah, there were actually 2 wild demons. One that Ray took out, like very epic. Like
Yeah.
Ray has amazing aim.
Yeah, Ray is just like, pew! I mean, Ray's just good at most things he does. I actually am convinced that like I really actually don't understand why. Well, I do understand why Ray was probably the one aimed to go to the Tafari, but I actually kind of think that Ray might technically have had higher scores than Norman if he tried. I think he probably kind of like faked a little bit of his scores and tried not to score as high as he could have. I don't know.
Well,
I feel like
know
Ray
he
is
said
probably.
that. Well, I know he said, like, before his suicide attempt, he said that he never had an interest in studying, but he endured it because he wanted to boost up his scores and basically make himself, basically develop his brain. So,
Yeah,
right
but,
before being shipped out, he would burn himself alive, and basically, it was basically him going F you to the demons. Like, you can't have me. Like, I'm
yeah,
just gonna strip this away from you.
yeah. You don't get me. But he probably did like work hard to like have high scores, but like he probably could have had higher scores if he like didn't know about what was going on, in the sense that he could have I don't know if my train of thought. No, my train of thought makes no sense because I'm thinking about like him having more information than he would have. So never mind. Never mind. Um, I was surprised that Ray wasn't selected. What I should say is I'm surprised Ray wasn't selected for Lambda at all.
I think Norman got selected because he actually got higher scores than Ray.
Yeah, which I think is interesting. I always thought like Ray was the highest scoring in the group.
Yeah, I mean, well, he was the highest scoring after Norman got shipped.
Okay, that's true. So Norman was like the absolute most intelligent, just not the strongest, because he was a very sickly child.
Anyway, back to
But like away from my ramblings about like weird things and not understanding things.
back to the kids almost being killed during their search and then being rescued by Sonju and Mujika.
Yeah, Sanju just comes in and is like, nah, no head for you now. Bye. It's kind of like a flick of the wrist. Bye, head. And Emma's fine, and Majika runs up there like, what's wrong? Why are you here? Where are the others? What is going on? Why aren't you at the shelter? And then Emma's like, no time to explain. A lot of stuff has happened in the last year. And then they kind of like, then they kind of go back onto their well, then they get interrupted by like the bombs going off in the town, which is apparently really close. Like we're closer to that town than we thought we were. They could hear the bombs.
Right. And then not Norman, Ray, Emma, Dawn, and Gilda realized that Norman tricked them because they were away for 4 days,
Yeah.
and Norman said, I'd give you 5 days.
Yeah.
So they realized that he was going to go through with his plan regardless.
Yeah. He was gonna do it no matter what because he believed he was right and he just wanted Emma to be away so that she wouldn't get hurt or wouldn't feel, or wouldn't get in the way, more so. Wouldn't get in the way and then get hurt because she was in the way.
Yeah.
That seems actually like really, really. Again, this is a very heavy episode. This is a very heavy scene. There's a lot of like death or near death in this episode.
Yeah, the attack on the demon village is really intense. Like, we see demons degenerate and then attack their family members, buildings are on fire, and children are crying, trying to escape. At one point, we see the younger siblings from a few episodes ago, the siblings that the 2 older demons were trying to catch high-quality meat for. We saw them. So basically, now that their brothers are gone, they're basically living alone at their home, and when the city goes up in flames, they're trying to escape.
Yeah, and presumably they die because we only see them for a little bit before we don't see them again. Which is like really sad. That was a very sad scene. And then we see the little girl whose dad is degenerating in front of her, and then she's basically telling the other demons not to kill him, don't hurt him, and then he, after degenerating, turns around and just bites her arm, and she starts crying and then dies. It's a very, very dark and heavy scene.
Like, and the facial expressions on the Lambda kids, Norman's facial expressions as well, it's chilling.
Yeah. So I think Norman, because we focus in on Norman after like the original things, when he gets down into like the pits of what is going on, it hits him harder than maybe he thought he would. He thought he was more resolute in what he was doing than he was. It kind of hit him more deeply that like the fact that like families are being torn apart and parents are killing their children and children are killing their parents, and there's lost children who are crying for their moms and all that hits him really, really hard. Especially, he's still really young, even for how dedicated to his cause he is. He is still rather young.
Right. And
Um,
the thing that snaps that kind of snaps him out of his resolve is this one little girl, and we actually saw her in, I believe, episode 5, when Emma, Norman, not Norman, I keep saying Norman, when Emma, Ray, Dawn, Gilda, Toma, and Lonnie were traveling through the city. Before they run into the brothers, Toma and Lonnie notice this one little girl carrying this container of human body parts, and
yeah,
we see that little girl again in this episode. She's running around crying, looking for her grandfather, and at one point Norman comes up behind her with a blade and is about to kill her. And then her grandfather shows up, and her grandfather is actually the old blind demon that the children met at the evil-blooded temple. And we learn that the granddaughter's name is Emma.
Emma. And Norman just is struck by the fact that this little girl has the same name as his younger sister. And I think it's the first time that to him, the demons are more than just bloodthirsty monsters. I think for the first time, the demons are people. They have families that care. They care about each other, and are just trying to live their lives and are willing to sacrifice themselves for each other. And they suffer just the same way him and his family have suffered.
Right. And there was
I don't think he was ready for that.
right,
Okay.
and there was a part when the grandfather was trying to convince his granddaughter to leave, and she's like, "No, I don't want to go. Even if I live, I don't want to leave you." I feel like I think it reminded Norman of when he was trying to sacrifice himself to save Emma and the others, and Emma was like, "No, no, no, don't leave. Leave, you can't die."
Yeah. And yeah. I like the scene that when Emma and the others get back, Norman is portrayed as a lot younger of a child, holding a very big knife for a second, before it returns back to him being um 13-year-old Norman or 12-year-old Norman, to kind of show how this is how everything that's coming from him is sort of coming from how he's kind of been reduced back to a child, where he feels scared and lost and helpless for a moment, for at least even a moment,
Right.
and that Emma sees him as a
He's
child.
still the Norman that Emma remembers.
Yeah, deep down he still cares. He's still a compassionate and caring person, even though he's been through so much and he has so much hate put into him.
Mm-hmm. So, one other interesting thing, I think Demon Emma's name is actually kind of foreshadowed back in episode 5, I believe, when we're first introduced to the elderly blind demon. At one point he drops his cane, and then he drops his basket filled with fruit that he was going to use as an offering, and Emma, being the compassionate person she is, charges forward to help him, and then Gilda basically hisses, "Emma!" Basically, "What are you doing?" And when she said Emma, the old man glanced up, and he's like, "Oh, your name is Emma? Oh, it's such a beautiful,
name.
Like,
Yeah.
he really loves that name because it's his granddaughter's name.
Yeah.
So he's like,
He
"Oh, this
connected.
child has the same name as my granddaughter."
Yeah. And yeah. And the old man's very sweet. The old man also at one point says that he saw this day coming.
Yeah, I guess he always suspected that the humans would eventually revolt.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Just as like a thing, like, you keep it makes sense, and I guess he was hoping it wouldn't happen. Water, because he does get. Also, I was right previously when I said that he was like one of the remainders of like the demon blood cult who like were immune to having to eat human
They
flesh. He
Right,
was.
because at one point, because the Lambda kids set off bombs across the village that would release the gas that would force the demons to degenerate, and when the cloud of smog or the gas covered the plaza that Norman, elderly demon, and demon Emma were standing in, demon Emma began to degenerate, but the old demon didn't, and Norman
He,
realized, wait, he's one of the evil-blooded demons, and he ends up using his own blood to stop his granddaughter from degenerating.
yeah. Um. Also, Norman fails to actually stab him. He just gets him through the hand.
Right.
Um. And then when he gets her the blood, she stops degenerating, and Norman almost stabs him again to kill him, and the demon was very willing to like give up his life to protect his granddaughter,
And
which is very sweet.
right.
And then
And then
and then
Emma
human,
and Ray showed up to stop Norman.
yeah, and that's the end of the episode.
Yeah. Next episode is going to be very interesting, like the aftermath of all of this.
Oh yeah.
Like, do you think we're gonna open like the next day, the aftermath of the attack, or do you think we're gonna open like 2 seconds after this episode ends, like the attack is still happening?
Yeah. Okay, I will be a little upset if it opens the next day because I kind of want to know what happens immediately after this, because this is where we're going to get like an argument between Emma and Norman, and where we're going to probably see Norman challenged on his beliefs, and even maybe kind of have difficulty, excuse me, within himself, about whether he is right or wrong after what he's seen.
Mm-hmm.
And then possibly a conflict between Emma and the kids from Lambda, and possibly between Norman and the other kids from Lambda.
Hmm.
So I think that will be interesting to see, because we're going to see then where the faction lines are really drawn,
Right.
which will be interesting.
And another thing, how will the farms and the nobles react to the situation? Like, do the children basically expose themselves, expose where they are, basically? Like, I feel like the nobles are going to hear about this attack.
I feel like this is a pretty isolated village. And with like the fact that like a lot of villages they do mention earlier that a lot of villages have been disappearing because of them. They've been turning feral, so
They talked about farms being attacked. Did they mention villages being disappearing?
Well, they mentioned that like a lot of villages have turned feral recently or stuff like that, which I think is just like,
that.
I might be misremembering. I just remember the fact like them saying that like there's a lot more feral demons than there used to be, or something like that. It was when the two brothers were talking, or something like that.
Like, when the two brothers were talking, they were talking about how farms are being attacked and children are being stolen, and
Yeah, I think this is before they started
how
talking about
they don't
that.
have high quality meat.
Yeah, it was. I think it was in there that they mentioned that like a lot of like the poorer and like more rural have been like suffering, and like a lot more people have been turning feral as a result of it.
I don't know if
And
they
they
said
don't
that
share.
I don't know if if they said that they turned wild. I remember there was a scene where the old demon says, if only the farms will share more of their meat with us, at this rate we'll all degenerate into wild. Like, I think he was I don't know if it's
Maybe.
actually happened yet. I think he was talking about what will happen if nothing
Yeah.
changes.
It's possible. I mean, I kind of interpreted it as that like there are like groups of demons and like villages that are turning feral as a result of the restriction of meat. And I might just have been making an assumption, but that was kind of how I was interpreting what they were saying. That like even though there is meat, that like even though there is meat, there's not enough for everyone because of the way the farms are operating, and that's leading to like a lot of degeneration and a lot of issues in rural communities, and that's a lot of rural communities are disappearing as a result of that. That's how I interpreted it. I might be wrong. So if my interpretation is right, then they could play off this village disappearing as just that happening to this village. But that's my interpretation. I could be very wrong about that. In which case, yeah, they probably if like information as however fast it gets out, if that does get out, then that would definitely tell people that yeah, hey, the kids are here, or at least something is here.
Right, so also wondering, like we were talking about Norman, Emma, and the Lambda kids, like how they're probably going to be at conflict with each other in the next episode. How do you think they'll react to Sonju and Mujika?
Not well. I'm pretty sure they're going to be aggressive and hostile against them. Especially if they find out that they're immune to the thing, they're going to feel a much more of a desire to kill them. Especially like immediately before they can like change anything. Yeah, I feel like they would definitely be. I feel like there's going to be like some amount of fighting, if not just, even if it's just verbal fighting. There's going to be a lot of fighting in the next episode. Particularly among the Lambda kids and the group of four and Sanju and Mujika. So that's my take. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens.
So, any final thoughts on the episode?
Everyone protect Demon Emma. She is a sweet, innocent child who must be protected. Everyone protect her. She is sweet. May she not die. Otherwise, sadness. How about you?
Well, now you got me thinking. Do you think Mujika and the old blind demon know each other, or?
Maybe. It's possible. It's quite possible. I mean, he's likely old enough to like have met her or met her group of followers or been part of her group of followers back when she was trying to spread her message.
I mean,
And also,
he was at the temple giving the evil-blooded goddess offerings.
but he's also blind, so I don't think he'll recognize her right away.
Right.
So he might recognize her from like her voice or like the way she acts or her ability to give her blood to people and prevent degeneration. Maybe she will like end the degeneration in the village. Maybe she will save the village using her ability.
I just realized, were Dawn and Gilda there when Emma and Ray showed up and stopped Norman? If they weren't, then they could be off somewhere else in the village trying to calm the situation down.
Maybe I would have to like go back and like pause the scene and look at it to try and see if they were in the background. I kind of assumed they were there, but I have no idea if they actually were there. I was too busy reading subtitles, which is, my dig against subtitles. Yeah. It would be interesting. I don't see why. I don't see them being able to do much in the village, because they're human kids, and this is probably an incredibly dangerous situation for them to be in. So I don't see them having gone off into the village to try and like do anything. I can imagine they would be with Emma and Ray and making sure that everyone there is safe. Yeah, but that's my take on it. But it's entirely possible that there's somewhere else, or they went back to the temple with Mojika and Senju.
I think Sonju and his horse were there with Emma and Ray. I'm not sure if Mujika was there or not.
It's entirely possible. I was too busy reading subtitles. Damn subtitles. Yeah, so I imagine they're all there, that it's not just like a handful, like a couple of them. I think all four of the main kids and the two and the two demons are there. That's what I think, at least.
Okay. Final thoughts on the episode?
A good episode. A lot happened. Sad episode.
Right. Intense.
Yeah.
I really like the music that they played during the attack on the village. I mean, we heard that song earlier on in the season. Like, it played at the end of Season 2, Episode 1. It played at the end of Season 2, Episode 4, I believe. But we get to hear an extended version of that song because in the previous episodes the song was played right at the end of those episodes, so we didn't get to hear too much of it. So
I thought that was pretty cool too. I really like the eyes of the kids and of Mother. In the beginning of the episode when she was handing Norman off, and they were hugging. I think how like pale and emotionless her eyes were. I thought that was a really nice touch, and they seemed to like stand out pretty well. And I thought the eyes of the kids as they were looking down at the village from their anime pedestals always seemed to exist. To like watch them and see what's happening. I thought that was pretty interesting to watch.
Like the facial expressions on Norman's face throughout the episode.
Yeah, just the way. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good, like, a pretty well done thing. That's personal, at least. I think it was pretty well done and pretty cool. I think their eyes, the way their eyes were like drawn, to convey sort of a coldness about them was pretty cool.
This ominous feeling.
Yeah. I think they did a really good job at that. Yeah.
So I guess that's it for the video. Thank you very much for watching.
Let's hopefully see you again sometime soon. Let us know what you thought about the episode and what you think about our about the content, and we'll see you again next week. Stay awesome.
Don't be afraid to like and subscribe. Check out our other videos. If you haven't already, be sure to share this video, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye!
Bye!